I love to uncomplicate speaking. Whereas sometimes in speaking, it's like, well, here's the 58 different approaches you must take on a stage, and you got to do this with your hands and this with your eyes and blah, 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 yada, yada, yada. Whereas I like to uncomplicate it in thinking around people want to experience something that doesn't suck, and people want to experience something that's cool. Okay, so if that's the mission, this doesn't suck, and in fact, this is really cool. How do we hit that? How do we hit that based on your skills, your talents, your abilities, your gifts as a communicator? And let's take the ones that are present and just innately you already based on your personality. And then let's layer on the elements that can amplify what works.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Dichotomy podcast. This is a show dedicated to exploring the dichotomies we experience in business and in life. My name's Mike Reed, and I'm a guy who's incredibly fascinated by understanding why we make the decisions we do in life, and ultimately, how do we lead a good life? As a business owner, I get the pressures of managing business, family, money, health can create great inner conflicts around what we actually want out of our business and our lives. This podcast is dedicated to exploring just that. I hope you enjoy it. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to today's episode of the Dichotomy podcast. It's Mike Reed here, and I apologize. First and foremost, it has been a sabbatical of sorts between episodes. For those who have been tuning into the show for some time, you'll know that in August 2018, I took a sabbatical from my business. I left Australia, which is where I grew up, and traveled the world for about 6 or so months before landing in Toronto, Canada. And that's about the time that I set up the Dichotomy podcast. And it's been a wonderful journey to date, but more recently, in the last 12 or so months, I have been a busy bee, setting up my company, Dent, here in Toronto, Canada. And I'm very pleased to say that we've had some really great success. We launched our business here in June 2019, and in less than 12 months, we've already hit our kind of first year revenue target for a newly established business here in Canada. We've got a great group of amazing clients going through our 12-month accelerator program. And for those that may not be familiar, Dent is a business accelerator company that's been operating for 10 years all around the world. It's worked with 3,000 founders to help establish them as what we call key people of influence in their industry. And we have an amazing tribe of entrepreneurs who are part of that journey here in Canada as well. And so that has taken a lot of my focus and a lot of my time. And unfortunately, the podcast has taken a little bit of a backseat in the last couple of months. So it's been a little while since in between episodes. But what I will say is that you're in for a wonderful reunion with the Dichotomy podcast today. And my guest is a gentleman by the name of Blake Fly. Now, to give you a bit of the formal bio, Blake believes that appreciation and gratitude are rocket fuel to create epic relationships in work and life. And therefore, what he does is build experiences that unleash more appreciation and gratitude into the world. And you should probably take heed with what he's got to say, because Blake is an entrepreneur. He's an 8-time TEDx speaker. And he's the co-founder of a global education company called My Life Online that teaches kids how to appreciate each other in their digital lives. Blake's approach to business building has gotten him invited to work with companies like LuluLemon, MEC, and Microsoft. So pretty cool bio and pretty cool track record. And what Blake also does is he hosts a global co-working community of entrepreneurs online designed to help people to make more progress in the important projects that they work on every day of the week. And once a year here in Toronto, Canada, Blake hosts an experience called New Year's Evolutions, where he invites entrepreneurs and artists who rarely take a break to pause, look back, and appreciate the progress and people in their life. He's also a huge fan of Ninja Turtles, doesn't get along with gluten, and has a huge crush on his beautiful wife, Emily. So in this episode, we got into a bunch of great topics, which for me, I really geek out on. And I think if you've been a listener of the show, you're going to geek out on as well. We talk about things like his big six, which are what are the six big values that orient his decision-making and his goals in life. We talk about his intuition, what role that plays in his life, and the tension and release of public speaking. Being in the business of speaking, Blake speaks over 100 times per year and has done for the last 8 or 9 years as a public speaker and running a public speaking company. And we also really dive into his 23-year relationship with his wife, Emily. All by the age of 35, Blake has been in a relationship with his now wife, Emily, for 23 years. And so we explore what are some of the dichotomies that he's experienced in the course of his love with his wife, Emily. And then finally, I'm going to leave you with 7 words that you can write in a message to change how you show up in your relationships. So much more is dug into in this episode. It's a real and authentic foray into the life of Blake Fly, but also I think the lives of all of us. I personally took a lot of nuggets of gold and wisdom from this episode, and I want to invite you to listen to this through the lens of a couple of important questions, which is, how are you showing up in your relationship, maybe with your spouse, but also with whichever other significant others there are in your life? And how well do you really know yourself and what drives you? I hope you enjoy this episode. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Blake Fly to the show. Blake Fly, welcome to the Dichotomy podcast.
Welcome to me. It's an honor to be here. Thanks, Mike, for the conversation we're about to have.
Cool, dude. Hey, yeah, I'm super pumped to have this chat. And, you know, it's a bit of a strange, in some ways, a strange conversation to be having where I feel very kind of connected to you, and we haven't known each other for too long. We've never actually met face to face because we are recording this in May 2020, which is, you know, still in a period of lockdown.
Yeah.
Before I get to our origin story, I'd like to maybe ask you a one-word opener.
Yes.
How are you feeling?
Keen.
And why did you use that word?
Because I feel keen to see where this conversation will go, because the ones we've had already have been limited yet awesome.
Very cool. And that's a good segue into tell the, rather than me tell the story, I'd love to hear it from your perspective. What was the origin story? How did we first come to connect and meet?
I believe it was the good old world of the internet, where a practice that I've adopted over the years is if I see someone online that I'm inspired by, not even for a specific reason, if I almost just get this intuitive hit of, I'm inspired by this person, I will send them a message. And instead of just sending like a, hey, I will send them a message about the thing that I was inspired by. And so I recall with you, I was inspired by a post that you wrote about you and your partner just navigating the experience as a couple. And it was a real heartfelt post. It was meaningful. It was inspiring. And I had recently put up a post that was kind of similar in my partner's experience. And so I just thought, I'm going to just comment on that. And I believe I then sent you mine of like, I actually recently wrote this and was kind of reluctant to write it initially, but I really wanted to. So I wrote it. And then you and I just sort of jammed on that, the topic of relationships, before any other topic really. And then we sort of spun into collaborating from more like a work point of view. But still, I mean, it was all very rooted in, I think, values more than, hey, we both can help each other in business. I mean, I think we can, but I don't even know if we can, because that wasn't really the focus yet.
And, what I loved about that little interaction that we had was we sent, I think, a few audio recordings, and then it turned into video recordings. And
yeah,
in a pretty short space of time, they were kind of pals.
Definitely.
You know what? I think you touched on a great point, which is how much do your values and your like value system, how much does that inform your decision making in life? And maybe linked to that question is like do you have a bit of a framework in your mind around how you approach making, decisions in life?
Short answer, I would say my values leads to decision making in like a ginormous way. So yes. Longer answer is you actually prompted a memory that I haven't thought of in a long time, Mike, which was when I was in my first career out of university. My job was to run a university residence with like 1,200 students. And it was an awesome job. I learned a ton, but we were given an allowance. I think it was like $1,000 or $2,000 that we could put towards professional development of any kind. And I had bought a book that year as a birthday present to myself. And it was a book by an author named Robin Sharma. And up to that point, I had never bought myself a personal development book. And for some reason, I was just inspired on my birthday. I was turning 23. And I was like, I'm going to buy this book for myself. And so I got really into this guy, Robin Sharma. I read his books. I was like watching some videos and podcasts. And I put my professional allowance towards going to his conference. So I was 23 years old. I was the youngest person in the room by a long shot. It was mostly a group of people that had kind of like lived a life, experienced enough regrets, and then wanted to like redefine their life. And I was there as a super green 23-year-old. But one of the main exercises was to define your big six, which is basically just what are your values? What are your main compass elements to navigate life? And to this day, I still use those same six. That was 12 years ago now. I've like remixed it a little. I think I've now got 7. But I give a lot of credit to that weekend experience when I was 23 because I made it once and I kind of set it and forget it, but it guides a lot of decisions. And when I'm unclear and unfocused, I go back to those main 6 or 7 domains of life and work. And what feels like 100 things going on in my head or my life or my business, I'm reminded, no, it's maximum 6 or 7.
Can I ask, what are those 6 or 7 today?
Yeah, for sure. So one of them is self. One of them is health. One of them is Emily, which also is like linked to, I write WKPA next to Emily. So Emily's my wife, and those letters stand for wife, kids, passion, and adventure. And I wrote those 4 letters when I was 23. So that's kind of cool because like I was nowhere close to getting married or anything. I wasn't even dating my now wife at that time. So then the next category is family and friends. And that's shifted over the years because it's more like family of origin, because Emily and I will be building a family of our own. So family of origin and friends. The next category is finances, and then clarity. And then the last one is life's work. And another little acronym in there is LIGHTS, LITS, which stands for learning, inspiring, teaching, and scared. As in, I want to learn, I want to teach, I want to inspire and be inspired, and I want to remain scared. Because if I'm not a little bit or a whole lot scared, I'm probably playing small or in my comfort zone more than I probably should be. So I believe those are 7 categories. Yeah. And I can dive into any of them if you want or leave it there.
Dude, they're awesome. I love it. Just to do an experience share myself, I have a poster up on my wall called my 2025 Dent. I don't know if I showed this to you or not.
Oh,
and,
no.
2025 Dent is a kind of vision board of how I see my life looking in 2025. And the way I created that is I asked myself a series of questions and I just sort of answer them over the years. And then I got a designer to design it up and make it look really pretty. And my kind of 5 values that I live by, or the sort of top values are love, business, health, wealth, and adventure. And I just do those kind of 5 simple little things that, at least up until this point in my life, have kind of oriented how I want to spend my time, and how I want to organize my energies and my efforts around those 5 things. So there's definitely a few things in there around the adventure and the health and family. I think, obviously for many people these are kind of core pillars of what makes a good life. But I love some of these other things you've added in, like clarity, life's work. I think the LIGHTS acronym, the WKPA for Emily, is really cool. Interestingly, when I created that, I put down love, and I didn't have a kind of a person to fill that bucket at that point in time. And then I met my girlfriend and partner, Jen. And so I like the idea of shifting it from just a generalized term to a specific person. That could be maybe a cool thing to do. Was there an intention behind why you put down Emily as opposed to love and relationships?
Mainly because I wanted to give that area of life a great deal of focus. So that's even why I separated out Emily from like family and friends, because I know for me, if I think of the topic around love, I just the way my brain works, I might actually think like, oh yeah, I'm giving and experiencing love, but maybe I'll only think of it in terms of like with friends or with my partner or with parents or my siblings. Whereas I chose Emily as like its own category of my daily practice so that I can get super specific. Like as an example, today, I'm just going to find it. What did I write today next to Emily? Okay, so today next to that category, I wrote acknowledge, validate, and LOL. Because today my wife had an important appointment. And so I knew, all right, if I don't acknowledge that and like validate her, it might not be like a must do, but it's an opportunity to like show up. And then I wrote LOL because that appointment may have gone great, may have gone not so great. And so if there's a way that I could maybe generate some like laughter and lightness, that'd probably go a long way. And I might write something completely different tomorrow, but I may have not found that ninja specific item that I could do as an action if I didn't have it written as Emily on the daily practices.
I think there will be many women listening to this podcast, Blake, who is gushing right now just hearing you talk about that, because I tell you what, I'm gushing for you, man. That is super cool.
I don't know if I'll pull it off. It's just written down.
I'm super inspired by that. That's amazing. Hey, so do you like this show? If you do, I would love for you to give it a rating on Apple or Google Podcasts or any other way that you listen to the show. For me, I felt like what was really lacking in the entrepreneur space was not just the guidance on the tactics of growing a business, but how to navigate the emotions of running a business too, and ultimately living both a balanced and an extraordinary life as an entrepreneur. So if you're digging what I'm putting down, please open up your podcast app of choice right now and just give the show a quick rating and review. Reviews help a ton. They help the show get found on the interwebs, and they just say to people it's worth listening to, and they encourage me to keep producing more episodes for you. So I'd be super grateful for your honest feedback and review love. Thanks so much. So can we dive into that? Maybe let's follow that thread. How did you guys first meet, you and Emily?
Oh, this is a way back playback. I actually met Emily at my cottage because I grew up spending summers working at a cottage grocery store. And then as a kid, I just would go up there like with my mom because she was a teacher. So she'd spend summers up there. And Emily's family, their cottage is 3 doors down from my family's cottage. And so I actually met Emily in 1997. So that's 23 years ago. Woo! And it's funny how I met her, because I remember coming home from a road trip with my parents that summer. We were in Prince Edward Island on the east coast of Canada, and I was pretty young at that time. I was like grade 6 or something, and we spent the weekend at friends of my parents, and I really clicked with their daughter. So like we became pen pals. It was a big deal. It's like, we'll be pen pals. And it was like super, it's like when parents are the ones almost doing the matchmaking more than the kids are like, I think you do like each other. Maybe you should be pen pals. Like, whatever. Okay, sure. And so on the drive home, my dad joked with me. He's like, hey, I mean, don't worry about it. Like, there's a new girl who's moving into the cottage 3 doors down. And I was like, okay, whatever. And what was so fascinating is that Emily and I, we didn't really talk to each other for probably 5-6 years. We weren't really friends for 5 or 6 years. I became friends with her brother. We spent a lot of time together. Her brother's like 4 years younger than me. Emily's 2 years younger than me. But then over the years, I found that Emily and I, we would just really start to enjoy each other's company in the summers. And like our lives just started to take similar paths. Like I had a summer job at the grocery store. She had a summer job in town also. And we would notice that we would start complaining to each other every summer about the current person we were each dating. And that was interesting because she kind of became like my confidant and I became hers on like matters of the heart. And in the year outside of summer, we actually went to the same university when we were older, but we never hung out during university. It was weird. It's like we only kind of had this like summer friendship. We'd meet up maybe once or twice throughout the school year because our families were friends, but it was just a summer friendship. And finally, later in life, I just started to realize like, I'm comparing like every girlfriend I've ever had to Emily. Like I would just compare the girl I was dating to Emily. And I only dated like 3 or 4 girls, but I literally held each of them to kind of this Emily standard, which was really not that cool to them. And I didn't even realize I was doing it. But at some point I kind of realized, I see why I'm super drawn to Emily and why I'm actually not seeing like a long future with the current girl I was dating. And so there was a time where I was single, and it was that time of life where I'm like, if I start dating someone else, Emily might like just get scooped up forever by some other dude. And she was still dating someone at the time when I was single, but I had a hunch that they were like about to end. I'm like, I don't think this is going anywhere. So I said to Emily, I'm like, we're going to date someday. Like I made the bold statement of we're going to date. And she was like, no, we're not. I'm like, nah, we probably will. So it was not something that she saw or that she was actually thinking was going to happen. But to me, I had a clear vision of this. And I even invited her to a work party when I used to work at that university. And I invited her simply because like we had a blast together every time we'd hang out. And so I just said, do you want to come to this work party? It'll be fun. I have 2 tickets. And when she came to that work party, everybody was like, first of all, who is she? Second of all, like, are you 2 dating? And I said to everybody kind of one-on-one, I'm like, well, she's my friend from the cottage. I've known her like a long time. No, we're not dating, but we're probably going to get married. And they're like, what? And like, yeah, I have a good vibe about this. So it was a long sales process to get her to date me, but she ended up agreeing to the concept, and we were dating for probably 9 or 10 years, and then we got married. So there's about 1,000 miniature steps in there, but that's the origin.
What a great story. I don't, little conversations we had about relationships, we didn't get that far. So I'm, again, inspired to hear that. That was a bold statement to make, right? And also a very clear vision that you had.
Yeah.
Did you experience or do you experience that frequently in life, or was that a rare occasion?
I would say I experience it more frequent than maybe some people, where I didn't used to share this much because I didn't realize it was going on, and then I kind of just judged it. But I think now I'm at a place where I'm good to share it more, which is I feel like I do a great deal of things intuitively, whereas I used to not. Meaning, if I just kind of get this like hit, even yourself, Mike, like I saw something of yours online, I was inspired by it. I took that as like an intuitive hit of, I feel like I connect with this guy. Sent you a message, we got into it, and now we're on like our third or fourth deep conversation. And instead of me going kind of from this intellectual headspace of, this individual looks approximately my age, and maybe we have something in common, and I believe there might be an opportunity for us to do some collaborative things in our career. It's like, no, I vibe with this guy. I don't even know him. I'm going to message him. And in business, I've started to really play that game at a higher level too, which is if I have an idea and I can't get it out of my head, I'll then test the idea in some way that resonates with me. And then if it works, I'll like just commit. And that's what led to me doing an annual event that I said I will do for 55 years. I mean, that was one of those bold, intuitive visions of when I did that event the first time, I could just clear as day see myself doing it every year that I'm alive and healthy. So I just called it. And it's not even from like a business or marketing point of view. It's from a point of view of, will this practice, will this experience benefit my own life if I do it consistently? If the answer is no, I'm not going to make a thing out of it. If the answer is yes, I'll keep doing it. But if the answer is like a hell yes, I will go all in on the thing. So that happened with Emily. That happened with some business ideas. And it happens on a micro level around even the way I connected with you. I have a hunch I'm going to click with this guy. So I'm just going to throw a message his way that's more than, hey, I saw your profile. It was like, hey, I was digging into your stuff. I was completely creeping your soul. I found this post from like 16 posts ago and I was inspired. Like, that's bold. I mean, that's kind of weird and creepy, but I own it and I rock it. And if people respond, it's a hell of a connection.
Yeah, I hear you, man. I feel you. And, you know, when I'm going to bounce around a little bit, but when I jumped online and I was just checking out your stuff in preparation for our chat today, and I watched your videos. You know, you're an 8 times TEDx speaker. You run a couple of education companies, one under your name as a motivational public speaker, one under the brand of My Life Online, which is all about teaching kids how to appreciate each other in their digital lives. So I'm curious to dive into both of those things a little bit more. But when I did watch your stuff, you were an incredible speaker. And I know you would get this all the time, but you are just so comfortable on stage and you bring an incredible presence. And so I'm imagining this being, you know, dialed into your own intuition plays a huge role in your ability to be able to, you know, deliver a powerful message from stage. What's your take on that? And then has this been a craft that you've really had to hone over the years, or have you always felt like you've had a bit of a natural ability in that area?
First of all, thank you, Mike. I appreciate that. It's a fun world to be in, the speaking world. I would say it's definitely just something that's been there all along, but very much like raw and unhoned. And it's a thing that since the moment I decided to enter the business of speaking, I've been a student of it hardcore. And even though I coach people at a pretty high level right now in building speaking businesses, I still remain a pretty hardcore student. And I have a variety of coaches just kind of keeping my feet to the fire to stay skilled and better over time. So I would say, though, that like on an intuitive level, I don't really know how much that applies other than I love to uncomplicate speaking. Whereas sometimes in speaking, it's like, well, here's the 58 different approaches you must take on a stage, and you got to do this with your hands and this with your eyes and blah, 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 yada, yada, yada. Whereas I like to uncomplicate it in thinking around people want to experience something that doesn't suck, and people want to experience something that's cool. Okay, so if that's the mission, this doesn't suck, and in fact, this is really cool. How do we hit that? How do we hit that based on your skills, your talents, your abilities, your gifts as a communicator? And let's take the ones that are present and just innately you already based on your personality. And then let's layer on the elements that can amplify what works. And if you even think of celebrities for a minute, because it's an easy reference point, like let's take Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. He is a larger than life human and could probably crush you with his pinky. And let's take Mark Zuckerberg, main dude with Facebook. Both of these individuals speak a lot on stages of different kinds. And if you were to see both of them speak back to back at some conference of like world dominators, Mark Zuckerberg speaks for 10 minutes, and then Dwayne Johnson walks out and speaks for 10 minutes. Those guys could say the exact same 10 minutes of words, and it will be a night and day experience because of their body, their voice, their heart, their personality, their comfort, their experiences. Like, so I love helping people and reminding myself, how do we make this not suck? How do we make this really cool based on what I'm capable of in ways that no one else is? Which sounds kind of cocky, but it's like, what can I do better than anyone else on the planet? Not because I'm here to be better than everyone else on the planet, but because then that helps me isolate my gifts and my talents and my skills in my way that I can deliver it. And then I can do the same for you, Mike, and for whoever's listening, where let's do this in a way that doesn't suck, that's actually really cool, and that can never be replicated because we're bringing it inside out of the communicator instead of outside in from what Google says to do when you give a speech.
Do you get nervous?
Every time. I just pace around like I'm about to go into surgery for the hours before I'm giving a speech. And anyone who's lived with me during my career as a speaker, my great friend Elan, he and I used to be roommates, and he'd always comment, he's like, you got a speech tomorrow? Because I just get weird. I'm quieter. I'm kind of like antsy. And my wife, Emily, I mean, she just kind of, I wouldn't say she leaves me alone the night before a speech, but she's very mindful of what do you need before tomorrow? Because I know you're doing the speaking thing. And it's, at times it's annoying to get nervous before speeches, but it's also incredibly liberating because, and hopefully this day never comes, so I'll knock on wood right now, but to this day, I've never not felt the switch just hit when I walk on stage. So I could be super nervous while they're literally reading my intro. But then once I am on the stage in front of the audience, it's like gone. I'm good. I don't know what happens there, but it switches from nervousness to adrenaline and presence in like not a lot of seconds.
I can really relate to what you're saying. For me, when I feel very nervous, apprehensive before getting up to do any kind of speaking or talks through what I do with Dent. And sometimes, not all the times, but sometimes I just, walk up on stage and you're right, there's a flick that switches and you just kind of, I don't know, bring it, right? It happens, it works. So something I've struggled with in this arena is the cost, what feels like the cost of the anxiety and the apprehension and the nerves and all that stuff leading into it. And I'm saying the cost in terms of emotionally, physically, etc. And then the release that happens post that kind of an experience. There's obviously to me, there's a bit of a dichotomy in there. What's your experience of that?
I wrestle with it as well because sometimes the day I have a speech or days leading up to it, I physically feel different. Like my stomach goes off. I might actually have to go to the bathroom when I'm not expecting it. I might have to my sleep might be weird, and I'm not a stressful mess, but weeks where I have no speaking engagements, I'm pretty consistent. Like, go to bed, wake up, I'm in a rhythm. Days when I have speeches and you're in hotels and on airplanes and just moving around, and you kind of got to be on the minute you enter the venue. There is kind of that dichotomy of pre-speech, almost like attention, post-speech, some form of a release. Like I love that feeling of driving away from a speech that has just gone really well, and all I got to focus on is just getting to the airport. It's like a period of time where it's really just kind of celebration. Hey, that went awesome. And you're just kind of letting the adrenaline come down. And so sometimes I think, is this good to have this sort of like on, off, on, off, on, off? Yet I think I've come to the conclusion that it's, for me, an awesome experience if I balance it out, because it actually, like, nothing replaces live. Even as I've moved most of my business online, even before the pandemic, like I was shifting most of my business online. And yeah, that's cool in a lot of ways, but there's something about live performance where even a Facebook Live, that's still not it. Like, sure, you're live online, but being in a room with actual human beings, and your mic could bust, the lights could go out, the slides could crash, there could be a heckler, like, who knows? It's a beautiful experience to be in front of a room of people who are looking to you deep down saying, please don't suck. And I really hope this is cool. And then when you deliver that, it's so beautiful, because a lot of things could have just really gone wrong. And when they don't, it's awesome.
Thank you, Blake. That was I really related to so much of what you just shared. And I think probably plenty of people listening could relate to, it's almost like this build up and the tension between the build up and the release between, any kind of performance act.
Yeah.
Or performance event, whether it's going out into the sporting field or if it's going into an important work meeting, or it's whatever it is, right? There's this human phenomenon we have, which is the build-up of tension that leads to some kind of change in physiology and neurochemistry and emotions to be able to bring a certain state, hopefully, to that event. And then there's the release.
Yeah.
And you have that sort of blissful period of time after that performance act or event, right, where, yeah, you're right. You're just kind of like, and it's such a liberating feeling. And I only get that feeling after that performance event. It's like I can't turn on the magical feeling of the release without the tension leading up to it. So I guess that's the duality, the balance.
I had a conversation with a colleague of mine. He's been in the professional speaking world as long as me, but he speaks more times in a year than I do. And I shared this idea with him around the seduction of the stage. We were just hanging out one day having a beer, and I just said, like, yeah, like the seduction of the stage, I think it's a real thing for people. And he just went, dude, why'd you have to say that? Like, I didn't know this until you said it, but I just identified something in me where, like, it was nameless before, but he said, I now identified that's exactly it for me. It's like I speak so often and I travel so much because for him, it's like the seduction of the stage. You have abilities and opportunities when speaking to hundreds or thousands of people at once that you just don't have anywhere else. If we go up a level to rock stars, some of them, their entire personal life gets detonated throughout their career because it's actually not as important as, like, the stage, because you're untouchable. It's like you have superpowers. I'm not saying this as a motivational speaker necessarily, but if I were some person going around doing arena tours around the globe weekly for decades, I mean, to come home and to do dishes, that is not only like a different vibe, that is a different existence. So to anyone listening who may be in the world of professional speaking or want to be, it's just, what is your relationship with stages? Because some people, they get sucked in by that kind of untouchableness that can come from being in front of a room and having people laugh and clap and cheer and cry based on stories that you tell, versus like, how comfortable are you going home and doing dishes as an equally important, awesome, meaningful, relevant part of your life and work? So, seduction.
So I read this from your bio. You said appreciation and gratitude are rocket fuel to creating epic relationships in work and life. Therefore, you build experiences that unleash more appreciation and gratitude in the world. So my question is, why did you choose to focus on emotions for your life's work?
I have no idea. I've never even heard it said that way. So thank you, Mike, for saying that, because I've never heard someone even frame it like that, like me choosing emotions for my life's work. I know that I was drawn to things like appreciation and gratitude for a few specific reasons. A couple that stand out are when I finished high school and I was heading to university, I was actually asked to deliver the valedictorian speech, and that was pretty cool. I didn't expect to be nominated to be the valedictorian of my high school. I wasn't like the most popular. I was connected, but I wasn't like ruling the school. And the assignment essentially was to deliver a 30-minute speech all about high school. And for me, I'm like, I got to do this in a way that doesn't get me beat up. A, because it can't be too boring. B, because I can't offend anybody, or I'll get beat up. Like, that was my driver. How do I do this in a way that doesn't get me beat up? And so I was one of the valedictorians, and then it was a friend of mine named Dominica. So we had to co-create this speech. And in co-creating this speech, we spent the summer after high school preparing it, because grad for us was in the fall. And essentially, without realizing it, I was warped into this appreciation world for high school, because I had to go through this exercise with myself of what were the highs, the lows, the moments, the people, the relationships, the lessons. Like, I had to dissect everything high school had to offer me. And at the same time, my brother was getting married, and he invited me to be his best man. I was only 18 at the time, so that was risky. But I had to write a best man speech. So I'd never written speeches before. I did like a grade 3 speech on dinosaurs or something. But that summer after high school, I was looking deep into the history of high school and the impact it had on me. And then I was looking deep into the impact of my brother and the impact he had on me, which inherently was linked to family. So by the time I was packed up and ready to go to university, I was just dripping with gratitude for high school, for family, and for milestones. Because I literally, in the span of a month, gave a best man speech seeing my brother get married, and gave a valedictorian speech seeing all my peers graduate high school. So those are like movie moments, as in, there's not a lot of times in life where people gather publicly and express appreciation publicly. The only 3 events that really happens that I've come to know are graduations, weddings, and then, Mike, what do you think is the third one?
Funerals.
Yeah. And all these events, grads, weddings, funerals, it makes sense that we get up onto a microphone and we acknowledge people. Yet we don't really do it a whole lot of other times. So I have chosen appreciation and gratitude accidentally as a big driver in my work, because I wrote thank you notes to my family before university mainly because I was just super inspired at that time because I was writing those speeches. So I wrote them each a thank you note. And what I didn't expect is that they each wrote me one back. So I got one back from my mom, my dad, my sister, my brother, my grandma, my grandpa. So I went to university with all these letters and I kept them. And over the years, I realized how rare that was, A, to have a lens of appreciation and gratitude that I got just kind of forced on me because I had to prep some speeches, and B, to communicate those feelings to people in our lives just because, instead of because somebody died, or instead of because it's a massive tragedy or a milestone. So I just love weaving that into my work because I guess I used to write it off as no big deal. And then at some point I realized, whoa, this is maybe the biggest deal. Because like the ultimate pain for people is when things are unsaid and then someone passes away. And one of the highest forms of joy and love for people is when they feel seen and when they hear how much they mean to someone. So I just try and bottle that up in a variety of ways, whether I'm doing work with kids or companies or entrepreneurs and everybody in between.
How impactful has that approach and that attitude been to the business that you're in? Maybe that's, I'm not sure if that's the right way to phrase that question, but I guess what I'm trying to get to is putting focus and energy into doing those things may not necessarily have, a direct benefit or impact, like, doing a marketing campaign or, writing some ad copy or something of that nature, versus really just maybe focusing a good amount of energy and effort on gratitude and appreciation and finding ways to pass that on as gifts to people. Can you share like what's the link between that and like what you've maybe achieved in career and business?
Yeah, well, I mean, I can just kind of jump right to the bullet point version of it, of a question that I get a lot, which is like, okay, great and all, how do you make money? And I find that I'll share this because it'll answer the question, which is I found that when I started my speaking business, I guess 10, 11 years ago, I didn't really know where to start because I mean, I was new to marketing and sales and I had never run a business before. So the way that I began was, okay, well, who are people that I know who work with students? Because I wanted to speak to students. And still to this day, a lot of my work is speaking to students. But I just wrote an email to all of my colleagues who were at other residences at other universities. So I would go to this annual conference, and I wasn't going to the annual conference anymore because I was done that job and I was starting my business. So I sent an email to each of these people that I would see annually. It was maybe 30, 40 people. And mainly to procrastinate, I sent them all kind of like a thank you email because I didn't really know what else to do at that time. I didn't have like a business plan, still don't. And what I did was I sent each of them an email just saying like, hey, Mike, it's been awesome seeing you each year at the conference. I won't be at the conference anymore. I'm switching roles, doing something different, and just want to say thanks for the conversations that we had each year. And I would include a specific example. So maybe if it was you, I'd say like, hey, Mike, won't be seeing you at the conference anymore. Really enjoyed our conversations each year. It's super cool to know what you and Jen are up to. I love the conversations about relationships, and all the best. Keep well. And what do you think I received back from those emails?
Opportunities, appreciation and gratitude in kind.
Yeah, I mean, the main theme of those replies were congrats, good luck, and what the hell are you doing now? So they asked, like, what are you up to? And I said to them, oh, well, I'm now speaking to students at university and college about how to transition into post-secondary school and have an awesome time while you're there. And then that led to opportunities to get paid to give speeches. And so I guess the point of this story is usually people think of, okay, how do you get someone's attention? Especially these days, like, how do you stand out? How do you get people's attention online? And that's where things like Facebook ads come into play, or marketing campaigns, whether it's email or whatever. But I think that there's no better way to get people's attention than to spontaneously and sincerely give them a little dose of appreciation. And then you're in the conversation. And when you're in the conversation, if you have something that can actually solve their problems or make their life or business better, you can take the conversation in that direction. So for me, when I sent those thank you emails to all those colleagues 10 years ago, I wasn't treating it like a sales campaign, but because they said, what are you up to? And because what I was up to so directly could serve them and their communities, we were just in a business conversation quickly, easily, and in a way that like got me paid early in my business enough to float me for a few months, which, I mean, that was 10 years ago. So it worked out. But I always look for opportunities to lead in that way. I used to only appreciate people because it made them feel good. It made me feel good. And then it didn't lead to business. And that's okay, because that wasn't the point. But then when I started to work with more people and coach more people and help them with their businesses, when I would talk about these methods, the main question was, okay, cool, now what? After the appreciation part. And me, I kind of just innately can take conversations beyond appreciation and move them into like a business opportunity, if it makes sense. But now what I say to people is, okay, there's sort of like 3 steps. You first need to engage someone, and then acknowledge them or appreciate them. Then this final step, which I missed for a lot of years, was then ask. Like, make an ask, so that it's not just, hey, I like your hair. I like your hair. Okay, cool. See you later. Love the hair. It's that final step then of ask them something, make some kind of an invitation, some kind of an offer to like move to the next step in your world. So for me, when I host my annual event every year revolved entirely around gratitude, I invite people with a personal one-to-one video. And I start the video by saying, hey, this video, Mike, is 1 part appreciation and 1 part invitation. And what that does is it kind of goes through the whole thing, like engage, acknowledge, ask. I'm not saying do that all the time, all at once in one message, but those 3 pillars, I would say for me, are how I've combined appreciation with actually like building an awesome business based on that warm, fuzzy thing known as appreciation and gratitude.
Dude, that is, I think, very powerful. I think there's a lot in there for the astute listener that was really tuning into that. I really personally took a lot from that. I think also just a very simple and practical and like just cuts through the noise kind of an approach to life and to business, right? I love it. I love it. Super, super authentic and real and yeah, different. I mean, shouldn't be different, but I guess it is different.
Well, and it's also kind of tapping into what I think everybody says, but no one's actually saying, which is anytime we put something out in the world, let's use Facebook as an example. It's just easy. Anytime someone puts a post up on Facebook, whether we say it out loud or not, deep down somewhere, we're saying, I hope someone likes this. Like, hey, like my stuff. Even if it's a picture of your cat, like that's going on for us. I hope someone likes this. Otherwise, we wouldn't put it up there. So I like to kind of ride that wave of telling people when I like their stuff. Instead of hitting the like button alone, I will take a screenshot. I will send it to the person and say, hey, you don't even know me yet. My name is Blake. I liked this. This impacted me. Here's one thing that I've already kind of done differently in my day because of this thing I read that you created. Like that really hits on a basic human need of, I hope someone likes this, which is code for I hope someone likes me.
Kudos to you, man. Here. Thank you so much for sharing all that. So, Blake, if we may, I'd love to dive into some of the specific dichotomies that you suggested were things that came to mind when I asked you the question before we jumped on the show.
Yeah.
You've mentioned a few things here. You've talked about kind of family of origin versus the family you're building, and that came up earlier on in our chat. You've talked about the dichotomies between entrepreneurship and employment, staying home and building roots versus going and traveling the world, friend zone versus dating zone, those kind of things. Can we dive into family of origin versus family of building? What can you expand upon that? What do you mean by that? And maybe if you could tell us a bit more about your childhood. What was childhood like?
Yeah. Childhood was cool. It was a good time. I'm the youngest of 3 kids, and I will say it on record. I believe eldest children have it way harder than youngest children. I literally just felt like I was coasting a lot of my childhood because of the paths that had been laid by my brother and sister, specifically my brother. Like I could get away with more because my brother could only get away with so much. But yeah, childhood was really, really great. As I said, I spent summers at a cottage, which was like super special, and got a lot of time with like my mom and siblings, and even school was great. I never really had a tough time making friends. I was never the most popular, but I always had a couple pals, so that was great. And what's interesting about the family of origin element to things is weaving into the topic of dating and eventually marriage. Growing up as a kid at that cottage and meeting my now wife at that cottage was really exciting and cool. And on one hand, you think, wow, you like know everything about the person. You know their parents, you know their family, like you know their passions. When in actual fact, I realized there's far more unlearning that we needed to do because we had so much context on each other's families and upbringing than if we had just kind of met online. It's like, so what's what do you want to tell me and what do I want to tell you? And a lot of the things that I now realize as sort of a dichotomy between family we're building and family of origin comes from that idea of needing to unlearn some stuff that we kind of thought one thing on the surface about each other's families and experiences, and then realized later, like, oh no, we only knew like 5% because that was summers at a cottage as kids.
And so you've made a distinction between family of origin and family you're building. Why did you make a distinction between those two as opposed to see them all as one?
Main reason is because I'd say my leading value is family. I'm into family. I like the idea of family. I took an elective in second year university called Family and Marriages, and I was the only guy in a class of 100 students. So I've always kind of been a nerd on the topic of family. If I had to choose,
did you do that just to pick up chicks?
No, but like if people wanted to, that would have been a good way to do it. And like if I could choose a movie to watch, I'd probably watch a movie about like family, some Steve Martin classic where he's like raising kids and telling jokes. I'm into family. And because of that, it's probably not a surprise that my parents, especially my mom, she's like super family oriented. Like, let's do this as a family. Let's do that as a family. Let's do this as a family. And that's cool. Except I realized kind of later in life that at times there'd be some like events and experiences that it was almost polarizing, where let's say, for example, it's like a family holiday and my parents are like, let's do this as a family because it's a family holiday. Yet I was in a relationship, a new marriage, and it's like, oh, well, wait, what do we actually want to commit to in our new kind of future together to do the steps now that actually create long-term rituals, events, experiences, traditions. And so family of origin came from, this idea of we actually get kind of stuck and in the weeds and it gets muddy and confusing if the term family just applies to both my parents, my wife's parents, my siblings, my wife's siblings, and us. And if someday we have kids, like that's just a big term. Because if I say to you, like, hey, we're going to your families at the holidays versus we're starting a family, like those are two very different pictures in a movie. One is like dynamics of one person's upbringing. The other picture is raising kids of your own. So I just find that it's helpful language for me around, like, I don't call my mom and say, hey, what's up, family of origin? But it helps me isolate, oh, what am I actually building with my partner in life, Emily? And what am I actually participating in because it's what's been done forever in my upbringing. And sometimes, because something's been done forever, it's a great thing to do. Other times, and this took me a long time to realize, just because it's been done forever doesn't mean it's a thing that needs to be done anymore.
What's it been like navigating the two sides of family? So your family of origin, Emily's family of origin. Has that been an easy kind of integration of families, if you like, or how do you integrate them? Do you not? Is one side very different to the other? How do you manage those differences? I'd just love to get a bit of context around that.
Yeah, well, it's a double-edged sword, and we get a lot of intel quickly in our relationship about family dynamics on both sides because we have that double-edged sword of still to this day, our families have those cottages, and so sometimes we will go up there. And what that means is everything it's like on a hyper frequency. Meaning, let's say you're in a relationship and you celebrate Christmas. Typically, at Christmas time, there's those conversations around, okay, whose house are we going to on this day? Whose house are we going to on this day? And it's just those little decisions lead to, okay, where do we go on what day? Where do we sleep? What room? Who's driving? Do we stay? Do we go? And that's typically a seasonal thing that comes up for couples because it's when you're kind of in both families at the same time. Now, not everyone's situation is like that, but I'm just kind of speaking in those terms for the example. Whereas for us, every time we're at the cottage, that conversation comes up hourly. So for example, Mike, let's say we're hanging out at my family's cottage and my wife gets a text from her mom saying, do you want to have dinner here tonight? It's a simple text. It's really not hard. But then it's like everything moves to committee because then it's, was there a plan here tonight? Or are we doing that tonight? There's really there's no Switzerland. There's no common ground. There's no kind of place where the two of us can kind of just retreat and go, what's our plan? We're just in that sort of like Christmas once a year. I guess we just got to like roll with the punches mode. So at times that has made things incredibly challenging. And at times that has made things incredibly eye-opening and has given us a lot of clarity around, wow, look at how many interactions we've had simply in one weekend, how many decisions, how many conversations, how many dynamics. And it's sort of like it's like we get 1 year in a weekend on seeing what works and what doesn't and what boundaries are useful and what are not needed and what conversations need to be had and which ones don't, and where we're just being frustrated and annoyed versus we actually need to have a conversation. And it's been an art and a practice to navigate certain conversations around, how do we put this? This place is awesome, but to hang out with both families within 3 doors apart as an adult couple a bunch of weekends in the summer, that's just like, there's a lot of dynamics that can fly around in that.
I hear. And you guys have been together for such a long time, given your age. Can I ask how old are you, Blake?
Yeah, I'm 35.
35. So what's the course of your love been like? And when I say course, I mean the kind of the meandering journey of how your relationship has evolved and how the connection has changed. Can you maybe talk to what's meaningful to you about the course of your own journey in love, and I guess what kind of big touchstone sort of lessons that you've learned along that journey?
That's a burner. Wow, we could go for years on that one. You made me think of this moment in time, and this may give some perspective, which is every Friday morning, minus the pandemic, I meet up at a diner with a group of about 3 or 4 guys, friends of mine. It's called the General's Breakfast. And it's called that because the generals typically wake up before the troops. And so it's like a 6 a.m. meetup. We go to this diner and we just kind of connect on life and business matters. Kind of like being a guy. And it's a cool way to kick off a Friday. And I remember telling a story at one point involving Emily. And I forget the exact comment that I made, but Emily, she's like incredibly gifted in the world of health and wellness. She's a naturopath and she's like a yoga teacher and just super intuitive, and she's just phenomenal. I'm pretty sure she's like 500 years old. She's just in like a beautiful woman's body. She's super smart. And I said at that breakfast conversation, yeah, like Emily, she's just into all that like woo-woo stuff. And as I said woo-woo, I like rolled my eyes and kind of made air quotes. And one of the guys at the table, a friend of mine, his partner, she's kind of similar, got similar interests and hobbies and wisdom. And he politely kind of acknowledged to me, said, hey, I think it might be important that we watch how we speak about that part of the women that we're in a relationship with. Like to just kind of write off the like, oh, woo-woo stuff, like all that. It's like that's one of their most incredible abilities and powers and gifts in the way that they do work in the world and have conversations and connect to people, and they're tapped in. And so maybe we just be mindful of that. And to him, it was like no big deal. It wasn't like a big thing. He just kind of said it and moved on. But that landed so hard for me because I realized it's true. Like I was basically just judging my wife for parts of her that I don't always have the ability to go like, I know exactly what that's like. I don't know exactly what it's like to be as tapped in and advanced on the topic of wellness and health and nutrition and all that. So I share this story, Mike, because that was just not a part of us when we started dating at all, either because we were just way younger or because she just hadn't gone to school for 5 years to become a naturopathic doctor, or because she hadn't become a yoga instructor. I'm not sure, but it just wasn't a part of us when we started dating. That is now a massive part of us at this stage in our life and our relationship, where we both have just evolved as individuals. We have different gifts and focuses and hobbies and preferences for the way we do work and connect with friends. And in those moments where I'm unintentionally judging my wife for things that are different from me, we're not as close. You can feel like there's sort of like tension or frustration in that moment. And then when I become wildly fascinated by the parts of her that I don't fully relate to, it's like we're dating again. It's like week 1 all over again. It's like meeting a whole new person of, holy, I don't understand this at all. Like I don't think this way. I don't work this way. I don't connect with people in this way. And if I judge that, then we kind of have a block between us. And if I just get madly in love, inspired in intrigued and like tell me more about it. It's like a first date with a different part of your partner. So that was a long-winded way to basically say that I think over the years, I've at times forgotten about her superpowers in life and what makes her amazing and gifted. And when I do, we're not as strong. And when I like continuously fall again in love with those parts of her, what may seem even like new parts to her, it's first date mode, time and time again. And if you need any clarification on that, feel free to chime in, because I don't know if that made any sense, but that's the story that came to my mind.
Dude, that was really super cool. What I loved about what you shared, it was really refreshing for me to hear that in a relationship that's, been you guys for as long as you've been in a relationship for, that you, even though you may not start the relationship with certain, traits or certain habits or rituals or whatever it may be, that, and despite, how blocked a connection can get over time if those things aren't there, that there can be inflection points and that there can be new agreements made and there can be a new blank canvas that's created as a result of changing how you show up with that person. And from what I got, and tell me whether or not that's accurate, but from what I got is that, the course and the journey of your relationship has been one where there's been these constant inflection points, and that's changed the trajectory in some kind of way, either maybe for the worse, but hopefully, the trend is of course better over time. And I think, again, for me, it's refreshing because it's inspiring actually, because it makes you remember and realize that no matter how much you may have lost your way along the journey, that you can always bring yourself back.
Yeah, and that's a beautiful reminder, because I think sometimes in relationships, like it's an easy thing to forget. I know straight up, and she'd be fine with me sharing this, because like we put a post up about it, and it's what I sent to you when we first met, Mike, but like that concept of the 7-year itch, where apparently if you're with someone for 7 years, like times can get tough. It's a total stereotype and cliche, but when we were together for 7 years, we nosedived. If we were in an airplane, like the front of the plane caught on fire and this thing was going down, and we're like, oh my God, what is happening? What is going on? Like we just were on each other's backs. Like you couldn't say anything to each other without it just pissing someone off. It was weird. And that was a lifetime ago. And in that season, we needed to remind ourselves of kind of what you just described, Mike, of like, you can always kind of bring it back. And in that season, we also needed to tap on the shoulder of a therapist to say, hey, we literally keep bumping up against each other. We need someone else's eyes on this. Can you tell us what we're not seeing? And it was phenomenal. Enter that super scary conversation. Because for me, I was like, does this mean we're screwed? The fact that we're talking to a therapist? Yet we'd been together for 7 years at the time, and we'd been through a lot of miniature lives in that time. So it was really refreshing to have that extra set of eyes. And I mean, that's what connected you and I to each other, is that topic of conversation. And to this day, I find that we'll still kind of go maybe once or twice a year for a tune-up with a therapist of just, hey, can you look at us and tell us what we're not seeing? And it's really, at times it can be challenging, but overall for us anyway, it's been beautiful. We leave with clarity and like awareness that we just can't really access when we're staring at each other.
I hear. To what degree, Blake, do you see a dichotomy between, that spark and that excitement and that infatuation? And you kind of touched on this with falling back in love with elements of Emily versus, a relationship evolving into one of connection and just companionship and kind of more of a state of contentment, if you like. Can you have it all? Or is it just inevitable that it moves from a place of, spark and excitement, infatuation into more of a less lighter fluid, more hot coals of connection, companionship, contentment?
I believe you can have it all. And the reason why I know it's true is because to me, I just tell myself that I believe we can have it all. Yet someone else might say, I believe you can't have it all. And then I'd say that's totally true for them. It's kind of like there's some people who they're just not into sports. Then there's other people, sports are their blood and oxygen. And so to one of those people, sports are stupid. And to that other person, sports are life. So I would say that I do believe people can have it all in a relationship, with the disclaimer of how do you enter into frequent conversations revolving around how do we have it all? How are we doing? Where are we falling short? What do we need to step it up in? Because otherwise I feel like there's no way to even gauge, do we have it all? Are we on track for that? Are we happy? Are we not happy? And straight up, those are very challenging conversations to have, I find. I mean, Emily and I, we struggle to get into those dialogues sometimes of, hey, let's look directly into the soul of our relationship and ask, how are we? That's really hard for us to do sometimes. And other times it's really easy. But I do believe that people can have it all in a relationship if that's the belief that they sign up for.
Mr. Blake Fly, my man, thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you, Mike. This has been phenomenal. I feel like we talked for 4 minutes, but I know we didn't.
Yeah, dude, that was just I feel a little bit of a selfish conversation for me because I geek out on this stuff so much, but I hope that for those that are listening, I have no doubt you will have taken a lot from that chat. Blake, you've got a phenomenal amount of wisdom for a 35-year-old dude, and it's so evident from what I could see online, but obviously this conversation as well just really, really enriches that. So I just want to commend you for everything you've achieved in life to date. It kind of feels like you've lived a long life already, just from the little I know you and from the stuff I've seen online and the conversations we've had. And I hope you take that as a great compliment because if the goal of our lives is to live well and live fully and fully expressed and experience as much as possible in life, it just seems like from the outside in, you've done a great job.
I appreciate that immensely, Mike. And like I said, it's been really cool to form a fast friendship and have had a variety of conversations quickly that have gone a lot of different directions. So thanks for making time to just get to know one another.
Cool, dude. Now, I will make sure that we link, various different things to your stuff online in the show notes. Can I highly recommend you head to blakefly.com. That's BLAKEFLY.com. Mainly because as a marketing guy and geek, I just want to say this is an awesome website. You've nailed it, dude. It's super simple and I would say probably very effective. So if you're an entrepreneur and you're into how do you build a really powerful, especially personal brand kind of a website, Blake's website's an awesome example. Is there any parting words you'd want to share, Blake? What maybe if I can give a prompter and feel free to talk to say anything you want, but from everything you've learned in life and I guess from all the work that you do, what would you say is one very powerful gift we could pass on to those important people in our lives in the next week that could have a dramatic impact?
These 7 words I'm about to say, if you put them in a text message right now and send them to the 5 most important people in your life or network, it can be a game changer. And the words are, hey, I just wanted to say thanks. And then when you send it, you will confuse the crap out of the recipient. They're going to think you're in trouble. They're going to be confused. And then all you need to do is explain like one specific reason you appreciate that person. And if they're still confused, just say, I heard it on a podcast. I don't know. I just appreciate you. But those 7 words, they're not said enough. And the times that they get said most frequently are usually when the person who needs to hear them are no longer in the room or even with us. So take those 7 words and intentionally throw them around as often as possible to the people in your life and business.
Blake Fly, thanks once again, my man.
I'll talk to you soon, Mike.
All the best. Hey, so thanks for listening. You know, the more I record these episodes, the more I realize this show is as much about navigating the emotional journey of business as it is about exploring the dichotomies my guests face along the way. You know, I've come to believe the more awareness we can bring to our emotions, the better the decisions we can make, and therefore the better we can navigate these dichotomies as they come up in our lives. And look, at the end of the day, I just love talking life, business, philosophy with like-minded people who really think deeply about the world, their business, and how to lead a good life. So if you want to connect with me or learn more about some of the things I'm up to, just head to www.mikejamesreid, that's reid.com. There's a whole bunch of links to some of the cool stuff we do at Dent, plus a little more on me as well. Otherwise, you can follow me or connect with me on all the usual socials just by adding /Mike James Reid or searching for Mike Reid as well. Okay, until next time, thanks so much for listening. And one final request is if you've enjoyed this show, please give it a rating or review on Apple or Google Podcasts or any other way that you listen to the show. Ratings help the show get found and just out to more people who will hopefully love it as much as you do. Plus, it tells me to keep putting these episodes together for you. So thanks so much and much love from me.